Have you ever wondered what would happen if Luffy and Rox were brothers? Would they conquer the seas side by side as unstoppable allies? Or would destiny turn them into the greatest enemies the world has ever seen? In a small village on Dawn Island, two brothers grew up under the care of their grandfather Garp. Luffy, the younger brother, possessed his familiar, cheerful nature and dreams of adventure, while Rox, 5 years older, carried a darkness within him that troubled even the legendary marine hero. Both met Sabo and Ace as in the original timeline and treated them as brothers as well. While Luffy dreamed of freedom and making friends across the seas, Rox spoke of tearing down the corrupt systems that enslaved humanity. Their childhood unfolded with constant friction, as Luffy would befriend bandits and forest creatures, seeing good in everyone, while Rox questioned why they tolerated threats when they could simply eliminate them. When Shanks arrived and gave Luffy the straw hat, Rox watched with skepticism, respecting Shanks' strength, but unable to understand why such power would be wasted on protecting rather than conquering. The incident with the Sea King revealed their fundamental differences. When the beast attacked, Luffy acted without thinking to save a friend. Rox, who had been training in the mountains, arrived moments later and killed the creature with brutal efficiency using techniques he had developed in secret. Shanks still lost his arm saving Luffy, but Rox's cold response shocked everyone, as he stated that weakness deserved consequences, and perhaps losing the arm would teach the pirate a valuable lesson about the cost of mercy. This moment fractured something between the brothers. Luffy began to see a frightening stranger in Rox, while Rox viewed his younger brother as naive and dangerously idealistic. Despite their differences, they loved each other deeply. Rox would never admit it, but he trained obsessively to become strong enough to protect Luffy from the cruel world, even if it meant protecting him from his own kindness. When the time came to set sail, both brothers left Dawn Island on different ships. Luffy gathered his crew exactly as in the original timeline, finding Zoro, Nami, Usopp, and Sanji, while Rox formed his own crew, gathering individuals who shared his vision of revolutionary change through absolute power. His first mate was a former slave who had murdered his captors, a navigator who had burned her previous crew alive, and a swordsman who sought strength to destroy the nobles who had killed his family. Every member carried deep scars and burning hatred for the world's systems. Where Luffy freed islands through friendship and inspiration, Rox liberated them through fear and domination, executing corrupt officials publicly within hours. His bounties skyrocketed faster than Luffy's because he was more dangerous to the world government's interests. The brothers heard stories about each other as they sailed. Luffy would learn of islands where his brother had slaughtered entire marine bases, leaving no survivors, and he would feel sick, wondering what had happened to the brother who once cried when they found an injured bird. Rox would hear tales of Luffy befriending enemies and showing mercy to marines, and he would shake his head in frustration, knowing that kindness would eventually cost his brother everything. Both crews entered the Grand Line through different routes. Luffy's adventures took him through Whiskey Peak, Little Garden, and Drum Island, gaining Chopper along the way, while Rox blazed a trail of revolution, targeting world government installations through overwhelming violence. In Alabasta, the timelines nearly converged as Luffy fought Crocodile to save Vivi's kingdom, while Rox killed Baroque Works agents, working his way up the organization through brutality. The brothers nearly met in the desert, but fate kept them apart. Luffy defeated Crocodile through determination and the will to protect his friends, while Rox arrived at rain dinners hours later, finding the warlord already beaten. Disappointed but proud, Rox then tracked down every remaining Baroque Works agent in Alabasta and executed them, believing mercy would only allow corruption to regrow. At Water 7 and Eni's lobby, the true difference in their approaches became clear. Luffy fought the world government to save Robin, declaring war on the entire world for the sake of one friend. Rox, hearing of this through newspapers, smiled with genuine warmth before growing cold again. He understood Luffy's heart, but knew the world would never change through such small acts of defiance. Rox began planning something larger that would shake the foundations of the world government itself. As Luffy's crew grew stronger through Thriller Bark and Sabaody, Rox was building an alliance in the shadows, making contact with revolutionaries who feared his methods. Dragon himself met with Rox and was disturbed by what he saw. A young man with his own face and his son's spirit twisted into something terrible by rage against injustice. When the Straw Hats were scattered by Kuma, genuine fear entered Rox's heart for the first time in years. He abandoned his plans and spent the next 2 years searching for any sign that Luffy was alive. When news reached him that Luffy had appeared at Marineford and rung the Ox Bell, Rox understood his brother's message that the 2 years of separation would be a time of preparation. Rox trained with a ruthlessness that shocked even his hardened crew, seeking out the strongest fighters who opposed the world government, defeating them and forcing them into his service. He mastered all 3 forms of Haki to incredible levels, with his Conqueror's Haki becoming particularly terrifying. Unlike Luffy, who used his power to protect, Rox wielded his Haki as a weapon of subjugation, and those who felt his presence would understand they had 2 choices: follow or die. The paths finally converged at Marineford, where Ace was captured and sentenced to execution, and Whitebeard arrived with his fleet to save him. Luffy arrived after crashing through Impel Down, but as the battle raged, a second ship appeared on the horizon, bearing the mark of Rox D. Monkey. Rox's arrival changed everything as his crew formed a perimeter around Marineford, and he unleashed his Conqueror's Haki across the entire battlefield, knocking out tens of thousands of Marine soldiers. The fight became a 3-way conflict, with the Marines fighting to to execute Ace, the Whitebeard pirates fighting to save their brother, and Rox's forces fighting to demonstrate the Marines' impotence and save Luffy. Rox personally engaged Admiral Sakazuki, recognizing him as the greatest threat to his brother, and their battle was intense as Sakazuki's magma met Rox's overwhelming haki and devastating combat techniques. Whitebeard began dismantling Marineford's infrastructure with his earthquake powers, creating chaos that allowed both brothers to advance. The turning point came when Sakazuki attempted to provoke Ace by insulting Whitebeard, but before Ace could respond, Rox was there. His haki-coated fist met Sakazuki's magma punch, forcing the Admiral backward for the first time, and Rox declared coldly that anyone who tried to manipulate his brother's emotions would die slowly. This momentary distraction allowed Luffy to reach the execution platform and free Ace with Mr. Three's help, just as in the original timeline. But as Sakazuki pursued them, ready to strike down Luffy, both Rox and Ace moved to intercept. The three brothers stood together for the first time in battle. The reunion of Luffy, Ace, and Rox created a moment of perfect synchronization as their combined strengths became an unstoppable force. Sengoku, watching with growing horror, ordered a full retreat, understanding the Marines had already lost, but Sakazuki refused to accept defeat and launched one final devastating attack. Whitebeard intercepted the attack, taking massive damage but creating an escape route. The old pirate declared that the new era belonged to these young ones and ordered his sons to escape. Then with one final earthquake, he split Marineford in half. As Whitebeard fell, Rox knelt beside the dying legend, who told him that power without purpose was empty, but purpose without power was useless. He urged Rox to remember why he fought, then turned to Luffy and smiled, knowing the boy would carry on the will of freedom. The escape was chaotic but successful as the Marines were too devastated to pursue effectively, and the balance of power had shifted dramatically in a single day. In the aftermath, the survivors gathered at a secure location where tensions ran high as Luffy's friends met Rox's crew for the first time. When Rox suggested hunting down and eliminating the remaining admirals while they were weakened, Luffy absolutely refused, and they argued for hours. Marco and the other Whitebeard commanders found themselves caught between the two brothers, respecting Luffy's pure heart but recognizing that Rox's approach might be more effective. Ace mediated between his brothers, arguing they needed a middle path since the world government was too entrenched to be toppled by kindness alone, but becoming monsters would make them no different from the Celestial Dragons. They decided to pursue a bold strategy: unite the four emperors under a single banner through a combination of both approaches, offering strength and protection to those who joined willingly and overwhelming force to those who refused. It was a compromise that satisfied neither brother fully, but was necessary for their goal. Their first target was Big Mom. When they returned to Tato Land, they came with Ace, Rox, and the remnants of the Whitebeard pirates. Luffy fought Katakuri again, pushing himself to master advanced observation haki, but when he emerged victorious, Rox had already systematically dismantled Big Mom's organization. He offered Big Mom a choice: join their alliance and keep her family safe, or watch as he executed her children one by one until she submitted. Big Mom agreed, recognizing strength and seeing an opportunity to eventually betray them. The conquest of Kaido was more direct as Rox challenged him to single combat. The battle lasted 3 days and nights, shaking Wano to its foundations. When Rox finally stood victorious, he did not kill Kaido, but offered him a purpose, telling him that strength aimed at toppling the gods themselves was glory. Kaido, beaten and impressed, swore his loyalty. With Big Mom and Kaido under their banner, the alliance commanded a force that rivaled the entire Marine fleet, and pirates from across the world flocked to their cause. The world government responded with increasing desperation, attempting to recall all 7 warlords, but they largely refused. Mihawk expressed no interest in protecting a corrupt system. Hancock joined Luffy immediately, and Buggy reluctantly joined the alliance. During this time, Luffy and Rox had many conversations about what would come after their victory. Luffy envisioned a world where people were free to pursue their dreams without oppressive governments, while Rox envisioned a world where the strong protected the weak by force, preventing corruption before it could take root. Neither could fully convince the other, but they agreed the Celestial Dragons and their system had to fall. The alliance spent 2 years growing stronger, conquering territory and building their forces. Luffy trained his haki to new heights, learning to code himself in Conqueror's haki through battles with Kaido, while Rox developed techniques combining his overwhelming haki with martial art styles from across the world. When they finally decided the time was right, the alliance's fleet was the largest armada ever assembled in history, sailing toward the Red Line. The 5 elders activated their final contingencies, releasing the full might of the Marine admirals and ancient weapons. The battle began at the base of the Red Line, where the alliance smashed through Marine and world government forces. Luffy led from the front with his Gear 4th enhanced by advanced haki, and behind him, the Straw Hat crew had each become legends capable of facing vice admirals. Rox commanded the second wave, and where Luffy's forces inspired hope, Rox's forces inspired terror, offering no mercy or second chances. The alliance pushed forward relentlessly, with Big Mom's devastating attacks, Kaido raining fire and lightning, Marco and the Whitebeard commanders fighting with renewed purpose, and the Revolutionary Army striking at key strategic points. The ascent to Mary Jawaz was a nightmare of combat as the Marines had fortified every path. Luffy's group took the direct route, fighting up the main stairway through wave after wave of enemies, while Rox's forces scaled the sheer cliffs. As they climbed, the truth of the Void Century began to reveal itself with ancient weapons activating and messages carved into the red line. The messages spoke of a world government formed through genocide, revealing that the celestial dragons were descendants of those who had destroyed a peaceful civilization. For Rocks, this confirmed everything he had believed, and for Luffy, it made him even more determined to tear down the system. The five elders finally revealed themselves as warriors of immense power, each having lived for centuries with abilities that defied categorization and seemed to bend reality itself. Luffy engaged two of them immediately with his Gear 5th activation, his awakened rubber powers allowing him to fight in ways that seemed impossible and turning the battlefield into a cartoon landscape. His joyful battle style contrasted sharply with the serious nature of the fight. Rocks faced the other three elders simultaneously, with his fighting style being the opposite of Luffy's, his conqueror's haki flaring continuously as a constant crushing pressure. The elders found themselves, for the first time in centuries, truly challenged. As the brothers fought the elders, Imu emerged from the throne room as the true ruler who had controlled humanity from the shadows for 800 years. Imu revealed that Luffy and Rocks were descendants of the ancient kingdom's royal family, the D clan, and that the will of D was a genetic curse compelling its bearers to oppose tyranny. This meant nothing to Luffy, who fought for freedom, but for Rocks, it was a moment of terrible clarity that caused doubt. Imu attacked with power unlike anything either brother had faced, manipulating gravity and generating light that burned hotter than the sun. The battle pushed both brothers beyond their limits as Luffy's Gear 5th began to falter, and Rox's haki could not fully overcome Imu's reality warping abilities. They were losing until Ace and Sabo arrived, reminding both brothers that they were family who fought together. The four brothers combined their powers in a way that shook the foundations of Mary Joaz, creating a synergy none had achieved alone. Luffy's awakened rubber abilities, Ace's flames, and Sabo and Rox's overwhelming haki worked together where one approach alone would fail. Imu, for the first time in 800 years, felt fear as these brothers represented everything the world government had tried to destroy. The final clash destroyed the throne room and most of Mary Joaz as Luffy's King Kong gun, enhanced by Rox's haki and engulfed in Ace's flames, struck Imu with the combined will of everyone who had ever opposed tyranny. The attack shattered the mystical authority that had kept Imu alive for centuries, and the ancient sovereign crumbled to dust. With Imu's death, the world government collapsed instantly. The elders aged rapidly and died, and marines across the world laid down their weapons. The world was free, but freedom brought new challenges as many islands fell into chaos without the world government's structure. Luffy refused any official title or position of authority, having achieved his dream of being the freest person in the world. He continued to sail with his crew, visiting islands and helping where he could, but never staying long enough to become responsible for running anything. He became a legend, the man who had toppled the gods and then walked away from power. Rocks, on the other hand, took a more active role, establishing a new organization that was a network of strong individuals who would prevent corruption from taking root again. It was not a perfect system, and many questioned whether rule by strength was truly better than rule by birthright. But Rocks believed it was a necessary stage in humanity's evolution toward true freedom. Make sure to subscribe and smash the like button for more One Piece videos!